Because Aaron invited everybody to the RC.
I invited everybody to my house and I missed to be there.
I'm kidding.
Good afternoon.
Hey, as long as there's
Thank
hot
you.
appetizers.
Thank you, Mr. Casey. That's right, as long as there's appetizers, it'll be fine.
It's fine. Doesn't even matter if there's dinner. As
That's
long
right.
as there's appetizers.
Exactly, if there's appetizers, that is all it takes.
I am. We're having our first meeting. It's so
It
exciting.
is, I was just gonna say, I'm so excited. Now you have to go to the, I'm just kidding.
I read through all those things, but it's hard to, it'd be nice if they sent a track changes.
Hello, Sean.
Hey. Sorry about that. No, it's not your fault.
I don't think they do, though,
There
actually.
were some invitations that said IRC, so that's why.
Yeah. I give you the corner to your chair with those legs in the way.
That's all right. We have a quorum, right? So we begin. All right. Call to order of the meeting of the Finance and Operations Subcommittee of the Hampton-Wilbraham Regional School District School Committee. If we can rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we have Michelle remotely, correct? I thought she said that, here, I'll call her.
See somebody walking up now, is
Doug.
Says, Michelle says she'll be arriving at 5:12. Can you call me again and start the meeting? Okay. Want me to call her? I got it right here, or you got it? I got it.
I texted John to you.
Hi.
Hi, Michelle. We just did the pledge.
Yes, I was watching it on YouTube.
Okay.
Hi, sorry. Hi, how are you?
So we have you
How are
on,
Hopefully I'm in the
on
right
speaker
meeting.
now.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Finance and operations?
Hampton Advisory Board.
Yes,
Yeah.
welcome.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice.
I can't believe I beat Doug.
You sure did.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone ever really beat Doug?
Never.
Right?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm Kathy Albano Pessolano, by the way.
Hi, good to meet
Nice
you.
to meet you.
Kathy.
Welcome.
Meet you. Why don't we just go around
I
the
know, why don't we
table
just,
for the benefit of Kathy? Why don't we just start here? And
Aaron Osborne, Assistant Superintendent of Finance.
Met you before.
Operations. Yep.
John Provost, Superintendent.
Met you as well.
I'm Mary Camerata, I'm just the recording secretary.
Okay. Nice to meet
Hi
you.
Kathy, Mark Ducey on Wilbraham Finance.
Nice to meet you.
Sean Kennedy, School Committee.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Mike Terabassi, school
I think I
committee.
met you. Oh. No,
I have met you before at Hampton Advisory.
Yes. Okay. And
Erin Dowding, John's assistant.
nice to meet you as well.
And we also have Michelle Boudreau on the phone. She'll
Oh,
be
yes.
here in
She's
person
the,
in about 6 or 7 minutes.
She's school
Okay.
committee.
Yes.
Okay, so as we had talked about and as I had promised, you know, we start every meeting after this with a discussion of the cost-cutting savings that is being done by the district. John or Aaron, who's going to jump on this? Sure, I've got something to add to our list. So, as you know, at the last school committee meeting, I presented the equity improvement plan for the upcoming 3 years. One of the items on that was to hold a series of focus groups, take a look at issues of bullying in the district. We are actually going to be using the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative to help do
Oh,
that.
sure. Thank you.
You've met our DEID coordinator that we share with 7 other districts in the collaborative. So the cost of that really is only 1/7 of their salary, which is what we're paying. So comparing that to
the cost of April, which is the month that the on-site team for the equity audit was here, that was 2 days of focus group meetings, right? That was $27,000. So I would say that, you know, the difference between what we're paying for Vanetta's salary and just this focus group component that she's gonna be doing for us is $17,000. So I would say that's another savings we can add to the list.
Do we have an actual list of the savings?
I'll do a list. Do you want me to do it in like a Google, do it in the drive with the finance
Yes, that would be great.
Google sheet?
Yeah, and then we just keep adding on to it each week and discussing what we've done the previous week. Aaron, do you have anything to add?
No.
All right, super. Okay, let's go over the update to discuss the hiring of the consultants for the asset capital needs for, I think, just Minichog, correct?
Correct. So, as you know, that was an item on the agenda for the last school committee meeting. The committee deliberated the potential of hiring a consultant in order to assess the capital needs of the collaborative, but ultimately decided against it.
Yeah, it was 4-4 with one abstention. We can bring it up again at the next meeting. I think what I got from it is they just wanted some numbers rather than just saying a nebulous, well, this is what we heard it would cost. But I think some school committee members don't understand that in order, we have to give the go-ahead and then we put out the RFP and then we get or the RFQ and we get the quotes and then go from there.
Why can't you, I'm sorry.
Be fair to say that people didn't vote against the concept.
Right.
It's just a matter of filling in the details
I believe
before
so.
the support for it.
3 people
I was gonna say, I think
against it.
they did vote against it.
It was 3 and 3?
Right.
It was 3 and 3 and then
But
One
one
abstention, yeah.
But
But one of the
I'm
persons
opposed
who
to the
said,
idea of-
yeah.
Of hiring
I
a
think-
consultant.
I think if we know the cost a little bit better, we might have a better, I mean, I argued, I thought I argued well, but unsuccessfully in the end.
Yeah.
So did Sean. So, I don't know, we both felt we advocated it for it strongly. You know, I was, you know, the things I talked about to the committee, I felt it was a huge positive that the towns are interested in taking a proactive stand to say, okay, we need to not let Minichog fall apart. Let's figure out how much money we need to save so that we can take care of the building, which I thought was awesome. And so.
I think the issue is, I don't think they made that connection, that, you know, the towns are saying, hey, listen, we want to fund, we want to take care of Minichog, and we need to help you get us there. And I don't think that connection was made as much. And when Michelle gets here, I believe Michelle was one of the people who voted against it. We can find out from Michelle, you know, what more she needs or would need or something like that. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's really, I'd like to understand, if I could, some of the reasons people voted against it. I mean, if you're gonna go to the taxpayer and ask for, as I look at these numbers, you know, roughly $1 million a year over the next decade to keep Minichog up to snuff.
Right.
I can't understand why we wouldn't look at that in a very earnest way. And maybe it was the way the motion was framed, I don't know, I wasn't there, but I'd like to hear if I could, because I know I talked to a few people after I heard about that. FinCom has not met, so I haven't addressed it with them specifically, but I have talked to a few members, and I've talked to at least one of the Board of Selectmen, and they were bothered by that decision.
Right. I think that having another vote and framing it a little differently, I think.
And can't you do an I mean, certainly you could do an RFQ without a vote from the school committee. You don't need it in the school committee.
We need a source of funds to put something out to bid. I mean, we
But an
have an
RFQ,
estimate.
certainly an RFQ isn't, you don't need a source of funds.
Sure, I mean,
Just to get a sense of how much money.
Yeah,
we're looking
I mean,
at.
I understand why it's
an
not a little bit.
RFQ doesn't give you, it's a request for qualifications, it doesn't give you a dollar amount.
Request for quote.
Hmm?
Request for
Well,
quote.
we could, yeah, try to get quotes from people, yes.
I mean, at least that would give you some
Okay.
substantive discussion with the school committee
Right.
and say, here's what we
Right.
expect it to cost.
Right,
When
we've
you
actually
presented
done
it to the
that.
committee-
We've gone to one of our the engineers that we use, and they've given us an amount.
What were the numbers?
An estimate about 30 grand.
But the 30 grand didn't count towards
Won't
any of
include
the IT.
So we'll have.
Well,
to
that's,
decide
and that's an
those
important
prices.
piece of it too.
Right.
But it's
There's
a.
a
Yeah, it gives you an
Right.
understanding.
I mean, I'll commit here and now to adding our percentage to whatever the assessment is for the school district for this piece of it. I mean, you know, if you wanna have it as a carve out, you know, whatever. I mean, I think it's so important to have that type of expertise brought to bear.
We were
'Cause it's a
suggesting
blueprint- It's a
take-
blueprint for a lot that's gonna happen.
Right, right.
For the foreseeable future.
We were saying that we were gonna take it out of the stabilization fund, you know, because that's what the fund is
Perfectly,
for.
perfectly.
Right?
Acceptable,
Um,
yeah.
and there was conversations that, you know, our people know our building the best. And I'm like, yes, I totally get that, but at the same time, these people have, you know, hopefully, you know, worked on several buildings, and there's things that maybe we don't see, we don't know, we don't understand, you know, that they would say, oh, don't forget about this, don't forget about that.
Right.
I mean, the biggest thing I think the schools needs to remember, you're gonna have to go in front of the taxpayer and
Yeah.
convince them you need this money. And if you do it without, I think it, let me say it this way, I think it really helps your case when you have a professional report from an architect or consultant, or however you frame it, saying, here's what they're suggesting. I mean, the town feels strongly enough that we did it ourselves.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is not unprecedented by any stretch. I think
Have
it's
we reached
responsible.
out to who the town reached out to? Did we reach out to the?
That particular company, no.
Okay.
We can.
It doesn't need to be that company. I mean,
No, I'm just saying, if we got one quote and it didn't include
Right.
IT,
Well,
maybe.
typically, yeah, we're not getting a quote, we're asking for a ballpark
Right.
from our,
Right.
one of the engineers we frequently use. Once we have that, then we typically put it out to bid. That's the way we,
This is an engineer that doesn't work for us or does work for us?
it's an engineer who's done work for us in the past, doesn't do specifically this sort of work per se. But someone who's worked with companies that do this.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be important, like, I would reach out and get estimate from the company that the town used. And I'm not,
They only did
I'm
the-
not in the business. so-
They only did the physical structures, they did not look at the IT, so that's an important element that you guys need to consider that, the
Yes.
towns didn't consider, but,
Yes.
and just, not that you have to do it this way, but when the town did it, we didn't do that, we just went and said, we're gonna do a study with a upper limit. So that the vote was something along, you know, to do a capital needs study, with I think the funding was up to $50,000, not to exceed $50,000. And in fact, one of the final selections that came in was well over that, and they were immediately disqualified because of that. That, again, just options, I'm not saying that's what you should do,
Exactly
but-
what we use the 30,000 estimate for.
Yeah.
Right, so we
Right.
put an upper limit on what we can do. We
Yeah.
request funds up to X dollars from the school committee, and then we put it out.
I think our next, if we make another motion and try to get it voted for, I think an important part of it will be having an upper limit, the amount of money that could be spent. I think that might.
Now, will you need one of the people who voted against it to reopen it?
Anyone can make a motion.
Yeah, well, this would be another motion, this wouldn't be reopening that same motion.
Okay. I'm just throwing it at you, just so
Yeah.
that you're thinking about that if somebody objects.
Yep.
Or someone who abstained, I would imagine,
Yeah.
could ask
Mhm.
or make a motion, right?
To make a motion to reconsider, but I think that we can just make another motion, I don't think.
Start fresh.
Start fresh, yeah.
So, I think the harder thing to get our mind around is actually the estimate for maintaining IT infrastructure. Because there's a good chance that the company that the town used doesn't have any expertise in those lines. Do we have,
Get expertise in what?
in assessing the needs of the IT infrastructure?
Right, I don't believe any of the towns, have discussed IT infrastructure.
We did not look at that.
Yeah.
Do we
So,
have anywhere, do we have?
It's two
any
very
idea-
different expertises, which is why we thought we'd split it.
I agree with splitting it. Do we have any idea as to who we could call that might have the expertise?
I can ask Bill to do that.
Okay.
Do you think you could have that ready for Thursday?
Oh, I don't know if I can have it ready for Thursday, but I can see what I can do.
Okay, thank you.
That's a big ask, John.
Just threw it out there.
Well, we don't even know who to call and, yeah, I think.
I did give a couple of numbers, I think to you, Aaron, right?
Yeah, I have this.
One of those definitely will give us a quote or can send us in the right direction.
Oh, so you knew where to call.
Yeah, it's a it's a company I'd worked for in the past, so the full disclosure, but I just reached out and said, do you still do this kind of work? And he's like, yeah, we do. So that's where I left it, and I gave it to Aaron.
Yeah.
And if we decide to go forward with any of that, I'll make a public disclosure,
Yeah.
and I won't, vote for that particular piece.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
May I ask what the name of the company is?
Ayott, Ayottte is his last name, and AY, like Ayott
Yep,
is the name of the company.
okay.
Mark Ayott.
And that's just for the IT
Yeah,
consultation?
his big claim to fame was making IT work at Fenway Park, and he does it through baseball and football stadiums
Cool.
across.
Great,
It's a
so
real
he's got
tricky
some
thing.
good experience. Okay.
Yeah.
Geez, our scoreboards in town aren't working correctly.
Better be careful when you end up with a jumbotron.
Can we talk a little bit about what the language of that should be, since it's something we'd have to talk about getting on the agenda? I'm wondering if the language should be to authorize the administration to solicit some quotes regarding both the structural and the IT
Right,
capital needs of the
Yeah.
high school.
that would be great. Michelle, if you wouldn't
Sure.
mind, we were just talking about the vote, the pros and the negatives, and I believe you voted against.
Yes.
Could you help share some of your concerns with that?
Yeah, so with the, I think Aaron had given a quote, had shared a quote that it could, a ballpark figure could be $30,000, and that did not include the IT infrastructure. So thinking about that and the fact that the quote could be more than that, I was thinking that, and also when thinking about the amount, like when we've gotten estimates before from consultants on work that was to be done, the cost greatly exceeded the bids that we had received,
Right.
and then timelines. So thinking about when we had the initial conversation, I think it was like 24,000 or 27 for the 7 buildings for the town,
No, it's 43.
43.
It was
I
not,
know.
the bid was, when it went out to bid, was not to exceed 50, but it came, I think it came at 43.
Okay.
From memory, I don't recall exactly.
So I think, in that initial conversation, it sounded like it would be, less because we're doing one building. I understand it's one large building. So those were some of the reasons why. Just thinking about, that's the cost of a mini split right there. And I understand that we do have to maintain this building. We don't want the same things. We don't want history to repeat itself.
Right.
We want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can, but we also need some of these things done, And I know we can't go backwards, but I wish maybe this had been presented, a few years ago, so then we could have been in a better place today.
It reminds me of that saying about, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago.
Mhm.
Next best time is today.
Right.
None of these costs are gonna get less.
Mhm.
The needs are only gonna increase.
Right.
While I share the concerns, before you arrived, we agreed that it made sense to have some kind of a cap on the figure.
Mhm.
But the need is only going to increase. So to the extent that, it can be reconsidered by the school committee, those are concerns addressed, I think it would be good for both towns to, and both towns, or at least in our capacities here, obviously, we're not making the decisions, but we'll support it at town meeting. This is an expenditure that we think is, important, very important.
I'll share with, I'm sorry, Kathy.
Are we talking about the annual town meeting, or are we gonna try and squeeze this in at the special
We
town meeting?
don't have
Because
time, we don't have time.
No, was gonna be my point, that,
No, this would be annual.
okay.
Michelle, I'll share with you too, the finance committee hasn't met since we talked about this last time since your vote. But I did talk to one or two of the finance members, and I did talk to Board of Selectmen, and both were concerned, had a lot of concern that that vote failed. I think the credibility you'll gain by, with a professional firm will be priceless. And, I mean, if you look at the capital needs for Minichog on this 10-year projection, just looking, eyeballing it, it looks like it's nearly $1 million a year.
Yeah.
So, while $50,000 or $60,000 might seem like a lot, and it is, it's not in the big picture.
Well, I think if it's presented in a way that, listen, you know, if we're not going to get the support of the two towns if this is not done, I mean, that's a different conversation for the entire committee. I mean, if the towns, if this is something that needs to be seen, and this is how we're going to be validated, and.
Well, I think you need to convince the voters that you're gonna need to spend this much money, and so I think every tool in your toolbox would be needed. I mean, you're not talking a little bit of money.
Oh, absolutely.
And to Mark's point, the town did it. You know, when the town was looking at their buildings, they did hire a consultant to come in and look at the structure of that. So if that's how the towns do it, maybe that's how we wanna do it as well. Yes?
Through the chair, if I could ask Doug a question. Earlier, did I understand you correctly to say that Hamden would be willing to commit some funding to make sure the study took place?
I will, you know, I can speak for myself, because our committee hasn't considered this.
Sure.
Speaking for myself, I will support this at town meeting, absolutely.
As would I. But I do have one question. The numbers, I have two sheets in front of me, one that I got last week at the advisory board meeting, and your capital improvements, projects. With this total number of $1,058,000 is incorrect. If you back out what you've crossed out,
Yes,
the total
Yes.
is $439,000, which was what you were originally looking at, putting
Yes.
on the annual town meeting,
Yes.
warrant articles. And I
Yes.
think, due to the fact that both Hampton and Wilbraham had joint meetings of their finance committees, regrettably, I think you were persuaded to wait to the fall town meeting on these particular articles. So I think that, at least for 2024, this could be a little bit misleading. You know, you look at it at first glance and you're thinking, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
$1,058,000.
yes.
When
I
it's
would have
actually-
hidden 24 because 24 is now over,
Right,
but we're
but,
still waiting.
right, but the
right.
special town meeting in October, and I'm not sure when you guys have yours, ours is October 30th. I don't know if this is gonna be published, I don't know, but I would, strongly recommend that you just put down what you would need and be prepared to argue those points on the floor of town meeting for the total of $439,000, which was what you originally.
This is not for town meeting.
Kathy, this is just a working
This is
document.
This is just a
informational
worksheet,
for
okay.
this meeting, yes.
Okay,
Not all of this goes to the town either. This
All right.
is representative of all of our needs.
yep,
Some of these, for example, we've had things that have been funded through CPA.
yep,
We've had things that have been funded through grants. The switches, the MDF switches down sort of
Yeah, I
the
see it.
technology section.
yep.
If you look over to the right, that was funded with town's ARPA money.
Oh,
So
I
that
didn't,
wasn't-
I'm sorry,
yes.
I didn't even
So
look
there's
at that,
some notes to
okay,
the right.
so that's why,
Yeah.
okay,
And typically, once a year is over, I would push anything that didn't get approved into the next year, but now because we're playing limbo, right, between years, you know, we're gonna have about 24 and 25 within not too many months of each other,
Right.
within 6 months of each other coming due. Just kick it down the road.
So are we planning on doing the technology and the building? Getting bids for both of those at the same time,
Yes,
simultaneously?
somewhere in there, yeah, I mean, the intent would be to figure out, to do them as separate bids though, have a
Yes.
technology company do the technology piece and have more of an engineering firm do the physical engineering.
And what we're gonna do at the school committee meeting is just make a vote to have them get the bids. You know, do an RFQ, request for quote, right, is what we would need, or? Yeah,
Well, RFQ is qualifications.
Usually qualifications,
In
yeah.
this world.
I mean, if
But
we can get,
RFQ is a
What's
this
the,
is our world.
what's the
Yeah.
threshold?
once you're getting quotes, there's not much point
Right.
putting it to bid. I mean,
Yeah.
and we have to follow the bid process of this actual.
Right.
What's the
So I wanna
threshold
make sure
for,
that we're-
what's the threshold for?
I think
competitive
it's gonna
bidding?
be like in the 30,000 range for doing this sort of thing, so
But can you just
that's why we were.
refresh us on what the threshold is?
I need to look at this
Procurement?
particular one, this is a separate statute.
Okay,
Other than 30 Bs, 10,000 for 3 quotes, 35,000 for needing to get proposals, formal proposals.
so it's right on the edge.
Yeah.
And you're saying
That's
if,
kind of why we're one.
if we need, if we want formal proposals, then we need to identify a source of funding.
Yeah.
So that's, we'll
Yeah.
put it back.
Which would go to the stabilization fund, which we had talked around here, and that was, the consensus was that's what that stabilization fund should be used for.
So are you gonna request at the meeting for both?
Yeah, to get quotes,
Okay.
you know, so
And
we
is
can
it
make.
30 threshold for each? Is that, that's
Well,
not-
I don't think IT would need to be 30. I can try to get something before the meeting.
Okay.
Do what I can.
Don't, maybe I'm wrong, but just because you go for RFP doesn't mean you have to accept them.
Right.
No,
You,
no,
you could go out and do this and not,
Yes.
and if they're crazy high, you say, look, we're gonna take a breather here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think what I'm hearing is we need to have the money in our wallet
You
and
can't-
know where we're
When
spending
you
it
have capital
from.
stabilization, you have stabilization, you have the money in your wallet.
Right, well, we have to agree to say that
Yes.
That's
That
where the money's coming.
we want to get quotes and we're going to fund it from the, I mean, this is one way to go. That we could say, we would like to request quotes and fund it from the Minichog Stabilization Fund. And probably, we should discuss them at the meeting separately. Physical infrastructure not to exceed $30,000, for the IT infrastructure not to exceed $20,000. And then those two together would be a maximum, of $50,000. Kind of with our kind of thoughts in it, but that amount of money, we're only saying to request quotes, right? So that's only putting our thoughts and intentions about, and then we'll get quotes, and then we'll have to discuss if we're going to accept the quotes that we get, right? And go forward with that.
With 30,000.
Well, once you give us a number, we would take the low bidder on, as long as it was within that number. So it wouldn't, that's your designation is the number, and then we're obligated to take the lowest
Well,
bidder.
but if we word it the way John suggested, that is a request to get quotes,
Mhm.
You
then,
don't have to.
then at the next school committee meeting, we would expect quotes to be presented to us and we agree to do it or not.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, we could
Sure.
word it that way, or we could, we just tried to, so what failed at the school committee meeting was a motion with no maximum amount of money set to go ahead and hire consultants to get the stuff done, which I was fine with because I understand how important it is to the towns for it to happen and how necessary it is so that, when they set up a savings account to take care of Minichog, the right amount of money's in it. What's the point of doing it if you don't put the right amount of money? So I was okay with that, but obviously the whole committee wasn't, right? So if we're gonna discuss it again, we need the back step, so.
Do we want to put a 30,000 limit if we don't necessarily have to take it, and if we do take it, we have to take the lowest bid?
Why don't you wait and see what
Yeah.
kind of feedback you get
Yeah.
and then have that discussion.
Okay.
I mean, regardless, you'll need to take the lowest bidder,
Right.
Most qualified bidder.
most qualified bidder, yeah. Apologies.
Will the RFQ, request for qualifications, give you dollar amounts?
No, that's a
This
very
is just
different, and a request for qualifications is something you do
To
if
see-
you were trying to develop a pool of qualified architects.
Yep,
So it's not something that a district this size would use, like a major city would use an RFQ. Mark was just using a different term. He was talking about just getting quotes, 3 price
So
quotes,
you
which you
need
can
an
do at
RFP
certain
for-
thresholds.
to get quotes,
An
an RFP?
RFP over certain thresholds you need
Okay.
to get formal quotes.
Okay.
I mean, so,
So we do an RFP,
yeah.
be diligent on
Yeah,
the
I
qualifications.
need to look at the regs for specifics, but yeah, okay, in terms of.
We could talk about that at the next school
Yeah.
committee.
these are daunting sheets, looking at each one of these buildings.
Yeah, they are.
A lot of work.
So we're not going to try to get this on the agenda for the next school committee meeting, correct? The one after, so that.
No, the next school committee meeting, we're gonna talk and see if we can get, you know, the consensus to instruct the administration to, you know, get quotes so we can see, you know, what we're looking at here. And then the next school committee, they will present the quotes that they have, and we can talk about them and see if it's still something that we want to do, or if we want to put it out for bid again with different qualifications, such like that.
Depending on what Aaron finds out about the threshold, the next school committee meeting might be not possible. Sometimes you have to have like a 30-day deadline in order to accept bids or something like that, so whenever they come back.
Right.
We'll do what we can.
I'm sorry, I meant a next.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But this coming one Thursday, we're gonna be able to put, at
Yeah.
least under your update, maybe under finance and operations update, you'll ask for the vote.
Where do you wanna
Is that
put
what
it,
it is?
Michelle?
We can do that,
Okay,
that's fine.
sure.
Will it
So
need,
I
does
would
it,
reintroduce like a motion.
Well, a motion to actually go and you just get quotes with no commitment to buy, so to speak.
Right, but does it make sense to have a threshold to talk about?
I would say no threshold, let's see what they come in at, you know? Because if we put it out to bid and we get, you know, quotes that are higher or lower, whatever, we have to take the lowest bid anyway.
Okay.
on one hand, putting the threshold there is meaningless, because we're gonna vote on whether or not we're gonna accept the quote at another meeting.
Right.
However, I think putting it in the putting the threshold in the motion, I think is a benefit, because that's public, and anyone who's doing quotes, they see what we're thinking. And, you know, and they know that, you know, we're not gonna bite if they come back with $90,000. But, I mean, I don't know, I see pros and cons to both. I kind of feel like one of the reasons it didn't pass initially was because there wasn't any dollar amount set, and it was kind of, I mean, in retrospect, when I thought about it, it was kind of like asking the committee to sign off on a blank check to go do something that we had really entirely.
If a public procurement does not allow us to go spend willy-nilly and wildly, we have
Yes.
to take the lowest bid.
Yes.
So,
But you're not accepting anything.
right, yeah,
All you're doing is going out and getting quotes.
right.
You're not accepting anything.
That's what we'll make it clear. Before, we were instructing them to go and do it, get the quotes and do it, and now we're just gonna say it's a new bid, a new motion just to go and get the quotes so we can have more concrete information. Is that something you'd support?
Mhm.
You'd support?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think providing some of the other additional feedback, I think the stronger language, I think would be helpful.
Perfect.
And it's separate from the IT one, that would be two.
And the IT one would be another one. And we can talk about whether we wanna put, you know, a limit or whatever on it, you know, at that meeting with the school committee.
Okay.
Is that okay with you, Michelle?
Mhm.
Great. Anything else on this?
I have one question.
Please.
As Doug had pointed out, this is, I don't wanna say overwhelming isn't the right word, but, given the fact, with the exception of Minichog, that the towns actually own the school buildings, right? And we have leased them, you know, in perpetuity to the school district, or however, whatever the length is. When you're talking about capital improvements like exterior windows and doors, I'm looking at, you know, repaving the parking lot and what have you, I'm looking at TWD, would that be just the responsibility of Hamden voters? And so all the subsequent schools, regrettably, that Wilbraham owns, that would be a cost to the town of Wilbraham, for not all of them, obviously, but for actual physical improvements to the buildings themselves would be a cost that Wilbraham would have to bear, and any,
Correct.
with Green Meadows or Thornton Burgess would be a cost that Hamden would bear, okay.
Yeah, we asked Wilbraham to help us pay, but they really don't want to.
Yeah, I
He
can
chose,
understand,
he chose
and
not to,
I'm
we
sure,
voted that down.
I'm sure, you know,
Right.
they would want us to
What?
try and help them, because that's quite a bit of money. But I'm not saying it's not needed, but it's a lot.
Well, I think it also bears saying, it may be self-evident, that a lot of it has to do with what's gonna happen with Burgess, right?
Yes,
And potentially other buildings that are, you know, when
Right.
we look at the 4 options that we're looking at
right,
for
I'll look at those very
reconfiguration.
briefly, right.
You know, there may be other, you know, there are other
Yeah.
options, but, you know,
Well, I guess I have one more question. The fact that we have a number of Hamden students attending Wilbraham Middle School, would that in turn put some of the costs, even though the town of Wilbraham owns the building, should Hamden be responsible for a portion of those capital improvements, giving the structure of the, I mean, you know, of the building, the doors, the windows, you know, what have you. You know, in all fairness, I'll probably get shot when I leave here, but I think, you know, Hamden may be responsible for some of those things, since we have so many students now in Wilbraham Middle School.
Kathy, I love the way you're thinking.
so.
Well, I think, you know, I think fair is fair.
Yeah.
It's
you know-
not, it's not driven by that at all, and that's probably something that needs to be addressed as the regional agreement is reopened.
Right, I'm just, you know, I'm just putting it out there, you know, you have a number, I don't know how many you know, middle school students you have in Green Meadow. I personally got up and spoke for, the closure of, you know, when Thornton Burgess was gonna be closed regardless. And I told, you know, at the public hearing that, look it, regardless of how you vote, Thornton Burgess is not gonna get reopened. And what you are now voting for is to merge the 2 middle schools, which I have to think, and still think, was a great idea. And so I apologize that it didn't pass, but I think passions being what they were, I think the voters were under the impression, given the, I don't wanna say propaganda, probably isn't the right word, misinformation, thank you, that was put out there, was that if they voted it down, that TWB was gonna remain open, which was not the case. So now what you have is an influx of Hamden students, whose parents want them to have a true middle school experience. Great, I'm a retired public school teacher, so let me just throw that out there. That, you know, Hamden may very well want to take a good hard look at doing, or funding, helping to fund some of the repairs to the Wilbraham Middle School.
Let's just put that aside and move on.
Okay,
because
sorry.
We're not gonna solve that tonight.
No, I know, I'm
And there
just
are
saying,
other
Very
things
quickly.
in play
Yeah.
on that as well, which will be clear and more so in the
okay,
future.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right, no, it's
New to
good.
the game here, so I just,
Kathy and I have to leave early to get to.
yeah, we have an
so
advisory meeting at
Keeping
6.
an eye on the clock and the agenda here.
When do we have you
This
to?
document which you have,
Yes.
Appendix B, actually covers some scenarios
Okay.
in the regional agreement.
Okay, great, thank you.
Well, let's just go, so that's the capital needs discussion, is there anything you'd like to add?
Under, item number 5, or
Yes.
item number 4?
Number 5.
I think Aaron and I are going to Wilbraham FinCom on Wednesday to talk about that. Just, Mark, if you can give us any direction on what would be most helpful.
I think we're primarily focused on the warrant articles for this town meeting. As a word of note, I'll caution you that we don't have our free cash certified yet. I'll
Still?
tell
When
you
does that
later,
happen?
talk about it later.
Do we?
So if
Yeah.
if it is not certified by Wednesday, so if it's not certified by Wednesday, my guess tells me Wilbraham FinCom's not gonna take any position. And if it doesn't get I think if it doesn't get certified by if it doesn't get certified by town meeting, I don't know if we're gonna have a town meeting.
What's your schedule? What do you schedule?
Monday,
Fair enough.
Tell me.
Monday the 23rd
Monday the 23rd.
is your town meeting?
Yeah, it's a week from today, but it's not been certified yet. I heard it was just submitted in the last few days to the state.
Oh, smokes.
I
There's
think
no
they're
way
saying-
it's gonna come back in a week if you.
Well, I don't know that, I don't know that, and I'm not gonna speculate on that, I was saying what it is, saying what's happening. So, we'll see what happens, but we're having a meeting right now.
We'll wait to hear from you on whether we're still on for Wednesday night.
If it, assume it's on, and if it's not on, we'll be in touch. Fair enough?
Item number 6 is something, it's a conversation that had just begun, I wanted to bring it to this committee as well, is that originally we were planning to make the planning committee was hoping to make the recommendations and get them to the towns so that in 2024, the fall, we could start this new setup that we, allocation of buildings, of which a lot of that information is attached here on the report that John and Aaron put together. I think that the way that things are going with supply chain issues, with cost increases, with the way things stand, that realistically, it's not going to happen until 2025. And it's something that we are going to explore more and figure out more in the planning committee tomorrow. But I did want to bring it to you all here. And some of the financial implications of that would be, what do we do with the middle school, right, the middle school's the issue, right? With the overcrowding.
At a few buildings.
Yeah, at a couple buildings, like is there any short-term things that we want to do, rather than just toughing it out for another year or something like that? And those discussions will be happening tomorrow, but as you represent both towns, we just wanted to make sure that this was,
Can I add a few more points on that?
Please, John.
Also, some legal issues.
Yeah.
We talked to the state in the spring, asking for feedback on what the commissioner would require in changes to the regional agreement. So we got that back, I was about a month ago at this point. That's now gone to the legal counsel for the school committee. They're gonna need time to incorporate those changes into a draft agreement, so there are those sort of legal,
It was a fairly substantial.
and there are also some important decisions that need to be made
Yeah.
to finalize, so that's gonna take some time as well. The other thing I would say though is it might actually create an opportunity to stagger some things, because as you'll see in that report, Mark, I don't know if you've seen that, but there are substantial moving costs involved with any kind of reorganization, so
I just peeked at it as we were sitting here, yeah.
if there's a chance to maybe take it in 2 bites, you might be able to spread out some of the costs over 2 years, and that might be financially advantageous. So I imagine those will be things we'll be talking about tomorrow night.
Right.
So,
I just want to make sure that you are aware, because we do have representation from the board, select boards, but, communication and transparency is what we're
No,
going for.
appreciate it. Thank
Yeah.
you. We'll
Are you guys
Take some
gonna
time to look
discuss
at this.
temporary stuff, like, do they still have these like classrooms and trailers that can be rented? Is that, the modulars, is that still a thing and a possibility, or?
We will be discussing whatever options are available
Yeah,
and the
we
costs
haven't,
that
we haven't
possibly
talked
are.
about it yet, and then we will be talking about
Real
it
lightning
tomorrow.
rod.
Yeah.
Huh?
So,
Real lightning
just give you a
rod.
bit of,
What?
a bit of thought. Those things were discussed in detail about 10 years
I didn't know
ago.
that. I'm sorry I brought it up.
And it was a lightning rod. I mean, there was a lot of pushback on that. But the reality is, if you talk to people who are using those,
Right.
there's a lot of positive comments from.
They've come a long way.
Yeah, it's not like this trailer that's on wheels sitting in at the construction site, it's not that. And, they're well equipped, and at least that was the situation 10 years ago, and I think they probably gotten even better.
Technology, air conditioning,
Yeah,
it's
so-
amazing, yeah.
They come with mini splits? There's another lightning rod.
Well, no, appreciate the heads up, though. I mean, this is, an issue that's been percolating for some time. And it is getting close to the surface, so it is gonna have to be.
If you look
brought
at it-
to town.
Yeah, how long it took us to get the strategic plan in place and done properly, that, you know, we just started meeting in January of this year, the planning committee, so, you know, I think that we're where we should be. Could we have done it faster? Possibly, but I think in the end, it might have just happened that it had to be postponed anyway.
We're looking really at all of the moving parts, we're doing our best to do that and making sure that we're getting the proper guidance. And also as far as the regional agreement goes, there'll be phases of modifications, so we're just doing the changes, we're making the modifications, or we've sent those to legal, the ones that DESI has recommended, but there are things that we have to discuss between the two towns and how we'd like to proceed on that, but that's going to be a greater discussion. And those changes will then be added to the changes that have already been made, so.
So John, are you suggesting some of the changes might occur for next school year, and then the remainder of the changes occur the following year, or are you not even thinking about doing
Yeah, I'm thinking that that's a possibility.
Okay, okay. I didn't know if you meant you were putting it off 2 years to even begin, or if you
No.
were just, okay.
I think, yeah, there's certain construction things that we can do and start, you know, rather than, yeah.
There's been no decision on what the reorg is gonna look like yet, though, right? I mean, that's not,
No.
I didn't.
We've been very above board, we've been very transparent, we've been taking steps, each step with everyone along the way, having, you know, meetings with people in the community, with the teachers, parents, and just to make sure that everyone understands what's happening as we move forward.
And that's another part of this whole puzzle, so. We realized that in order to get a decision made and get everything moving, that would have to be in place for kids to land in well suited classrooms next fall. We probably need to have a special town meeting in January, and we were also advised that getting special town meetings in January is likely to be cost prohibitive and just not possible.
3 town meetings in a year is a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We like town meetings though.
Does anyone else have anything that they'd like to bring up or that you'd like on the agenda for next week? Because I know we have our friends from Hamden that will be leaving shortly.
Can I just ask one question, maybe Doug knows the answer to this. So if you look at like the capital projects for Wilbraham Middle School in FY25, there's about a $4.2 million
Yep.
In updates.
Meaning,
I don't know, I know there is some sort of law around that.
Right.
If you spend over a certain percentage of the
Yeah.
building's valuation, you
Yeah.
have to do all kinds of other stuff to it. Does anybody know, I'm trying to remember this, because we dealt with it 5 or 6 years ago, and I forget, maybe it was 7 or 8 years ago.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, but it used to be 30% of the assessed value, because
Yeah.
public buildings, the assessment is a fictitious
Crazy.
number.
yeah, I thought it was in the 20% range.
But I think that was changed to exclude windows and doors, maybe roofs from that calculation.
I wasn't familiar
So
with that.
there was a,
I think that's something that we need to look at, because
Yeah.
if you're talking $4.2 million of the assessed value, well, you just might as well build a new building. Because you're never gonna get those repairs done.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what the assessed value of Wilbraham Middle School is, but I'll bet you it's not a lot.
It's got a new roof,
Pardon me?
it's got a new roof,
It's got a new roof,
it's gotta be worth something.
gotta be worth something. Probably 20 cents in the dollar.
Not today, inflation.
Yeah, well, maybe,
Right, I
okay.
mean, and I don't think
I
we're
just-
just doing the doors and windows without doing it as doing MSBA.
I just raised it, but
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if you can do the MSBA.
Yeah.
It kicks in all sorts of other ADA requirements
No,
and.
I think Doug's right, I think that recently there has been an exclusion for roofs, windows, doors, also because of
For that
security
very reason.
updates, yeah, for that very reason.
Okay, well, you still
know.
have $2.2 million worth of updates that you're looking to
But
do.
it's still a significant issue.
Yeah,
And so I think it's something we absolutely need to look into. Somebody needs to look into it. I'm not sure if the towns need to look into it, or this group needs to look into it, but somebody needs to look into, like, what's the requirement before all sorts of other code issues kick up?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're
Yeah.
not gonna get these kind of things done.
Mike probably knows that offhand.
We've got to run.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Well, it's very nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you, Kathy.
To answer your question, I don't think we have anything else to put on the next agenda. I think
Are we meeting next week? at 5 here, or no, you
No,
have town meeting?
we're not meeting weekly at this point.
November, our next meeting's November 20th.
November
November
20th.
20th.
November 20th is our next.
Thanksgiving week.
That's the week.
There's not a need to,
That's right.
we will meet as needed, and we figured that right now it is more of all of us getting on the same page, all of us understanding
Sure,
how we're moving forward. And then, we can hit the numbers when there are real numbers, not just numbers like just take last year's budget, change the date, and let's start with that. Like, let's wait till there's some real work done, before we look at that,
thank you.
right?
All right, next meeting, I'll get
If I
nice
can
seeing you
answer
again,
anything on
and
that, Kathy, please reach out.
Yep.
I will, thank you.
Kathy, welcome aboard.
Thank you
Thanks
very
very
much, I
much.
appreciate it.
Sorry I'm not here all.
And Mark, good luck with your free cash.
See you, man. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, we're, our cash is.
We'll see you.
I should say, I've been pushing on the town of Wilbraham, you can leave, Doug, I'm not talking to you. I have been pushing on the town of Wilbraham, to create a very formal process for capital. And I've specifically been talking about Minichog, but I think it could apply to that as well. So I think I'm hopefully gonna get some movement on that, where we can, it's only fair to everybody to know exactly what the process is, and if we wanna set the money, how we're gonna do this, and I don't know how we're gonna fund it, but I think these are discussions we need to have, and hopefully we can define a process that we know what it is, and you know what it is. And my hope is what we would do is we would put, and I'm gonna speak only for Minichog, is we would put money into a set account, say, here's your allotment. It's probably not $1 million a year, frankly, and maybe it is, but I don't know that, but I don't envision it being that. But it'll be X dollars a year, or some facsimile of that, and then the town would vote on it, whether or not they wanna spend the money on it or not. And that's what I'm envisioning from a big picture, but I'm hoping to.
If I can say, that's probably also a conversation to be had around the regional agreement, because the regional agreement does have a fairly specific understanding of how capital needs, it's in line with state law around capital needs. So I just want to be careful at that. That would be something for the regional agreement in terms of Minichog as a regional, so regional capital.
Well, I'm hoping to get this done in
Specific
short order.
process.
I'm hoping to have this done in the next month or so, so that
Yeah.
we, before the beginning of budget season,
Right,
so that we can,
right. But that's
So it's
not
employed.
what the regional agreement says, is all I'm saying.
what does the regional agreement say for Minichog?
It says it's part of the assessment. It's part of the overall, the capital needs are part of the overall assessment. That's the discussion we had last year.
I think we had that discussion last year, and I think I disagreed with that, the way I read it, but we could
Okay.
talk, we could look at that
Yeah,
again. We could look
yeah.
at that again, but I think we're just trying to, I'm trying to
But-
define a process. And if we just start stuffing these numbers into the assessment, this'll be a very difficult life.
But that's also, you're in a partnership with Hamden on that also, so
I understand that.
you need to go the same way Hamden goes. I
No, we don't.
don't care
No,
what the
we don't.
regional agreement
No, I
says,
disagree
whatever
with that.
process, but it just should be. it
I
should be
strongly
the same.
disagree with that,
Yeah.
because I've had that discussion
And
already
it should
with
be in the
people.
regional agreement.
I've had that discussion already with people.
Sure.
Hamden may choose to do this in a different way than Wilbraham does, but it would be dependent, if we're talking about Minichog only, it would be dependent upon Hamden funding the proportionate amount. It doesn't mean we have to do it the same way,
Sure.
but I just wanna make it clear to everybody on what it is, so hopefully we can get some movement on this over the next few weeks and have some discussions around it, and I'm just trying to give you what I'm trying to work with.
It would be great if you could be part of that discussion, or at least there when you're having that discussion. The people that it affects directly the most.
Okay, okay, we can talk offline about that.
Sure. Thank you. Anything else before we go? Anything that, other than what we've already talked about for the agenda for the next meeting, anything that we haven't touched on that we'd like to bring up? You good? Good?
Yep, all set.
All right,
Thank you.
make a motion, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, opposed, none. Ayes have it, we are adjourned.
Thank you. And then we'll save the policy, right?
Yes, policy next.
So-
Have fun with
Yeah.
that.
Good night, Aaron.